Today, we embark on a thrilling journey through history to explore the incredible story of the USS England, one of the most famous warships in American naval history. In the chaotic and dangerous waters of the Pacific Theatre during World War II, where the waves of war surged with intense force, the USS England stood as a symbol of bravery and determination. Commissioned on December 10, 1943, this formidable destroyer escort was destined to make its mark as a legend in naval warfare. Join us as we uncover the untold stories and pay tribute to the brave souls who served on this floating warrior. Our story begins on May 13, 1944, when the Fleet Radio Unit Pacific, FRUPAC, based in Hawaii, intercepted and decoded a critical message. The transmission came from the Japanese submarine Yuri 16, reporting its estimated arrival off Bougainville in the Solomon Islands at 10 p.m. on May 22nd. This valuable intelligence was quickly relayed to the US Navy's 3rd Fleet and then to Commander Hamilton Haynes, who led Escort Division 39. Acting swiftly, Commander Haynes ordered a 3-ship task group to set sail from Tulagi. The group consisted of 3 destroyer escorts: the USS George, led by Lieutenant Commander Fred W. Just, the USS Raby, commanded by Lieutenant Commander James Scott, and the USS England, under Lieutenant Commander Walton B. Pendleton. All 3 ships departed from Purvis Bay, Florida Island, on May 18, 1944, with Commander Haynes aboard the USS George, directing the operation as the officer in tactical command. Meanwhile, additional intelligence reports revealed that the Japanese Navy had set up a line of 7 submarines between the Admiralty Islands, north of New Guinea, and Truk in the Central Caroline Islands. This line, designated NA, was intended to intercept US carriers that were expected to pass through the area. Japanese forces anticipated that Allied troops might soon launch invasions, but they were unsure if the targets would be the Marianas, the Western Caroline Islands, or New Guinea. The recent US carrier strikes in support of General MacArthur's campaign along New Guinea's coast suggested to Japanese planners that Western New Guinea might be the focus. In response, the Commander-in-Chief of Japan's combined fleet ordered Operation A-Go, a plan aimed at launching a decisive defense of key territories. This strategy would soon lead to major clashes, including the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, where the Japanese suffered devastating losses. As part of their preparations, Vice Admiral Takagi Takao, commander of Japan's 6th Fleet, directed submarines from the 7th Squadron to form a scouting line along the NA line. Unlike the US Navy's approach of assigning broad patrol areas to submarines, the Japanese positioned each submarine at specific coordinates. This rigid strategy proved to be a critical weakness. The turning point came when the Japanese intercepted a US aircraft's contact report on submarine RO-104, prompting 6th Fleet headquarters to order the NA line to shift 60 nautical miles southeast. However, the radio message was intercepted by the Fleet Radio Unit Pacific and deciphered by the Joint Intelligence Center, Pacific Ocean Areas, JICPOA. With some effort, US intelligence broke down the coordinates of the Japanese submarine positions. Although there was already a process to sanitize and share code-breaking intelligence with US submarines, this would be the first time such intelligence was provided to American anti-submarine forces in the Pacific. A newly assigned anti-submarine warfare officer at JECPOA delivered the sanitized information to the US 3rd Fleet, setting the stage for the hunter-killer group to intercept the enemy. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown that would test the skills and resolve of the USS England and its crew. The intelligence reports proved highly accurate, as the submarines were found within 50 miles, or often even closer, of their predicted locations. The 3 ships in the task group, the USS George, USS Raby, and USS England were all Buckley-class destroyer escorts, which were relatively new to the fleet. These ships were part of a large production effort, with 154 ordered and 148 completed, some even serving in the British Royal Navy. The USS George was named in honour of Seaman Second Class Eugene F. George, who had received the Navy Cross posthumously for his bravery aboard the heavy cruiser USS San Francisco. On November 12, 1942, during a battle off Guadalcanal, George manned his anti-aircraft gun and continued firing at a crippled Japanese G-4M Betty bomber, even as it descended towards the cruiser in flames. The bomber's pilot, knowing the plane was doomed, aimed directly at the San Francisco's 20mm gun battery. Seaman George and his fellow gunners held their positions, firing until the end. Many other gunners on the San Francisco were also recognised with Navy crosses, and several ships were named in their memory. The USS Raby was named for Rear Admiral James Joseph Raby, who died in a car accident in 1934 while serving as the Commandant of the Charleston 6th Naval District. He had also earned the Navy Cross during World War I for his leadership of transatlantic convoys, including the very first convoy escorted by US forces. The USS England was named in honour of Ensign John C. England, who perished aboard the battleship USS Oklahoma during the Pearl Harbor attack. He had survived the initial torpedo strikes and repeatedly re-entered the ship's radio room to rescue 3 fellow sailors. On his 4th attempt, he did not return. For many years, his remains were interred with other unknown crew members from the Oklahoma at the Punchbowl National Cemetery, until they were identified in 2016 and reburied in Colorado Springs beside his parents. While he was awarded only a Purple Heart for his courage, 2 ships would bear his name in tribute. The Buckley-class ships were armed with 3 3-inch guns, but were primarily built for anti-submarine warfare and convoy escort duties. Their arsenal included 1 triple bank of 21-inch torpedoes, 2 stern depth charge racks, 8 side-throwing K-gun depth charge projectors, and a Mark 10 Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar. The Hedgehog, a British invention from 1941, first saw use in 1942 but gained widespread recognition for its effectiveness in late 1943. Unlike traditional depth charges that exploded at a preset depth, Hedgehog projectiles were equipped with contact fuses that detonated upon impact with a submarine. This weapon launched a pattern of 24 projectiles in an elliptical spread, reaching 200 to 300 yards ahead of the ship. All projectiles entered the water simultaneously, giving the weapon a unique advantage. When using traditional depth charges, crews had to wait 20 minutes or more for signs of debris to confirm a hit, which was not always reliable due to enemy deception tactics. In contrast, with the Hedgehog, a successful hit was immediately evident by an explosion. If there was no hit, there would be no explosion. Additionally, the Hedgehog could be reloaded in about 3 minutes for a follow-up attack, and its use did not disrupt sonar contact as depth charges did. The sound of standard depth charge detonations could interfere with sonar, making it difficult to track a submarine after the initial attack, which sometimes allowed the enemy to escape. Another significant advantage of the Hedgehog was its stealth. Submarines had no warning that the weapon was being used until it was too late, as the projectiles would take about 7 seconds to sink to a depth of 200 feet, leaving no time for the submarine to evade. In contrast, experienced submarine captains could often predict when a ship was using stern drop depth charges based on the attacking ship's movements and prepare evasive maneuvers. The combination of these advanced tactics and new weaponry put the USS England and its fellow destroyer escorts in a powerful position to hunt down enemy submarines, setting the stage for one of the most remarkable anti-submarine operations of World War II. Submarine warfare during World War II was a deadly game of cat and mouse. When destroyer escorts like the USS England deployed depth charges, skilled submarine captains could often anticipate the attack, quickly diving or manoeuvring to avoid the explosives rolled off the stern. While side-throwing K-guns helped disperse the explosives to cover a wider area, they were still not as effective as the Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar. The Hedgehog had a smaller explosive charge, about 30 to 35 pounds of TNT or Torpex, compared to standard depth charges. However, this was often enough to breach a submarine's hull on contact, whereas traditional depth charges usually required multiple near misses to sink a sub. British data from World War II showed that one submarine was typically sunk for every 60 depth charge attacks, while the Hedgehog's success rate was significantly higher, with one submarine sunk for every 6 attacks. The Hedgehog did have one drawback. It lacked the psychological impact of a barrage of depth charge explosions, which could severely shake a submarine crew's morale, leaving them anxious about which explosion might be their last. On the other hand, these depth charge barrages boosted the morale of the ship's crew, as they could hear the continuous detonations, giving a sense of active engagement. The Hedgehog, with its silent approach and lack of loud detonations, did not provide the same sense of aggressive action. On May 14, 1944, the Japanese submarine Myo-16, a veteran of 9 war patrols and multiple resupply missions, departed from troop under Lieutenant Commander Takeuchi Yoshitaka. The submarine was carrying rice in 75-pound rubber bags to resupply the bypassed Japanese garrison at Bougainville in the northern Solomon Islands. I-16 was a large Type C-1 submarine, specially designed to carry a 2-man, 2-torpedo Type A midget submarine. The I-16 had a storied history dating back to the attack on Pearl Harbor. It was the first submarine to launch a midget sub during that infamous attack on December 7, 1941. Lieutenant Junior Grade Masaji Yokoyama piloted the midget sub in an attempt to infiltrate Pearl Harbor several hours before the main air attack. The fate of Yokoyama's sub remains unknown, but it was not the midget known to have entered the harbor or the one that was found aground and captured on Oahu's east coast. On the afternoon of December the 7th, I-16 received a radio transmission from what was believed to be Yokoyama's midget submarine, confirming a successful air attack. The following day, a transmission reported that the midget could no longer navigate. None of the 5 midget submarines or their crews were recovered by the Japanese, although one officer was captured by the Americans, becoming the first Japanese POW of the war. I-16's record of action continued beyond Pearl Harbor. On May 30, 1942, it launched a midget submarine commanded by Ensign Katsusuka Iwase, which managed to penetrate the British anchorage at Diego Suarez, Madagascar. The midget sub struck the battleship HMS Ramillies with a torpedo, causing severe damage. However, thanks to the ship's efficient damage control, Ramillies survived and went on to take part in the D-Day landings in Normandy on June 6, 1944. Iwase's midget sub also sank the tanker British Loyalty, but it did not return to the Myo-16. Throughout the Guadalcanal campaign, I-16 continued to be an active participant. It carried out several submarine operations and resupply missions. On November 11, 1942, the sub launched Midget HA-30 in an attempt to attack U.S. ships, but HA-30 was spotted by American destroyers and scuttled by its crew, who managed to reach Japanese lines on Guadalcanal. Later, on November 28, 1942, I-16 launched Midget HA-10, which successfully torpedoed the ammunition and fuel-laden cargo ship USS Alcibar AK-23. The damage forced Alcibar to beach itself. Despite being struck by another torpedo from a different submarine shortly afterward, the crew's extraordinary efforts saved the ship, earning Al-Shabaab a Presidential Unit Citation, the only cargo ship to receive such an honour. On December 3, 1942, I-16 undertook yet another mission to Guadalcanal, launching HA-22, which fired torpedoes at a US destroyer but missed. The midget submarine was later scuttled, and its crew made it to shore. I-16's history showcased the dangerous and determined nature of the submarine warfare in the Pacific. It had survived numerous engagements and carried out various missions, yet its fate was soon to be sealed by the relentless efforts of the USS England and her hunter-killer group. Among the midget submarines lost off Guadalcanal, one was recovered during the war and is now on display at the Naval Submarine Force Museum and Library in Groton, Connecticut. It's important to note that the HA numbering system used to identify these submarines is a post-war creation and was not implemented by the Japanese military at the time. The I-16 submarine had seen extensive action prior to its final voyage. It played a role in covering the Japanese evacuation of Guadalcanal between January and February 1943, conducted supply runs to New Guinea, and even sustained minor damage in an air attack in December 1943. However, a crucial radio transmission made just before leaving Truk on May 14, 1944, sealed its fate. This communication revealed valuable intelligence that guided the USS England, USS Rabai, and USS George to intercept the submarine. I-16's cargo of rice for the Japanese troops at Bougainville would never arrive. On May 19, 1944, an Allied aircraft spotted the Boeing 16 on the surface, north of Bougainville. The three destroyer escorts formed a line and began a sonar sweep. At 1:35 p.m. the USS England detected I-16 using sonar. The Japanese submarine immediately started evasive maneuvers, which were standard tactics consisting of abrupt changes in direction to confuse sonar tracking. The USS England launched several hedgehog attacks, missing with the first two, but scoring a hit on the third attempt. Although the I-16 survived that initial strike, it continued to maneuver aggressively. England's fourth attack missed, but on the fifth attempt, solid hits triggered a massive underwater explosion at 2:35 p.m., lifting the ship's stern out of the water. Debris surfaced about 20 minutes later, confirming that I-16 was destroyed, with all 107 crew members aboard. At that time, the Japanese were deploying a line of 7 submarines, known as NA, positioned between Saipan and the Admiralty Islands to intercept American carriers. These submarines were Type C class, smaller than the more capable Type 1 boats that had been increasingly used for supply missions to isolated Japanese garrisons. Armed with 4 torpedo tubes and an onboard deck gun, the Type C subs were relatively underpowered and had limited capabilities for the reconnaissance missions they were assigned. Despite being equipped with radar detectors, the submarines lacked radar systems, which left them at a disadvantage against Allied anti-submarine forces. Ultimately, none of the 18 Type C submarines deployed in this capacity would survive the war. Among them was submarine RO-106, under the command of Lieutenant Katai Uda, which was on its 11th war patrol. RO-106 had a history of action, having struck the landing ship tank LST-342 with a torpedo on July 18, 1943, in the Blanche Channel near New Georgia. The explosion tore the ship in two, sinking the stern section immediately, while the forward section was later towed to shore for salvage. The attack resulted in 121 casualties, including the entire 5-man mess division of African-American stewards and cooks, as well as the famed artist Lieutenant Commander McClellan Barclay. Barclay, a successful artist before the war, had joined the Navy Reserve and was active in creating aircraft camouflage and iconic recruitment posters. His legacy lives on in the Navy's art collection, which includes much of his work. Despite sustaining serious damage from depth charges in October 1943, RO-106 was repaired and returned to service. During the US landings at Eniwetok Atoll in February 1944, the submarine carried out a reconnaissance mission, locating several American ships and attempting to direct an airstrike, a rare example of Japanese submarines trying to coordinate with aircraft. On May 22, 1944, at 3:51 a.m., the USS George detected RO-106 on the surface with radar. The ship's captain ordered an immediate attack, while the USS England stood by to block any escape attempts. Unfortunately for the Japanese, RO-106's radar detector failed, leaving the submarine unaware of the approaching danger. As George illuminated the sub with a searchlight, RO-106 crash-dived, desperately trying to evade the oncoming Hedgehog attacks. The first attempt missed, but USS England soon took over the pursuit. During the hunt for RO-106, the USS England maintained its relentless pursuit. As RO-106 manoeuvred to evade detection, it reversed its course, possibly intending to launch a torpedo attack on the England. This was likely because the submarine's crew did not fully understand the capabilities of the Hedgehog anti-submarine weapon system. England's first Hedgehog attack missed, but the second strike achieved multiple hits, sinking RO-106 with all 49 crew members on board. Next in line was RO-104, commanded by Lieutenant Hisashi Izubuchi. The submarine had previously conducted patrols in the North Pacific near the Aleutian Islands. During one patrol, it was nearly torpedoed by an unknown submarine while tracking what turned out to be a Soviet merchant vessel. Despite Japan's alliance with Nazi Germany, Japan refrained from attacking Soviet ships to avoid provoking a conflict with the Soviet Union, a stance that frustrated Adolf Hitler. In late 1943, RO-104 shifted its operations to the Solomon Islands, where it played a rescue role. On November 3, 1943, the submarine saved 75 survivors from the Japanese light cruiser Sendai, which had been sunk in a clash with US cruisers at the Battle of Empress Augusta Bay off Bougainville. Among the rescued was Rear Admiral Baron Matsuji Ijuin, commander of the Japanese destroyer Squadron 3. On May 23, 1944, Allied aircraft sighted RO-104 on the surface, roughly 250 nautical miles northwest of Kavieng, New Ireland. The USS Robbie gained radar contact at 6:04 a.m., prompting the submarine to dive. Despite RO-104's sonar jamming attempts and sharp manoeuvring, Raby and George's repeated Hedgehog attacks missed. It wasn't until the USS England took its turn that hits were scored. England launched 2 Hedgehog attacks, and the second barrage struck home, with 10 to 12 projectiles hitting the target. A massive underwater explosion followed, but it took over 2 hours for debris to surface, confirming the loss of RO-104 along with its 58 crew members. RO-116, relatively new to combat, was under Lieutenant Commander Takeshi Okabe. On May 24, 1944, the USS George detected the submarine's radar signature at a distance of 17,000 yards, prompting RO-116 to dive. Despite the submarine's aggressive evasive maneuvers and sonar jamming techniques, the USS England once again managed to strike. After 2 unsuccessful Hedgehog attack runs, the third attack hit RO-116 with at least 3 projectiles, sealing the fate of the submarine and its 56 crew members. The USS England then turned its attention to RO-108, commanded by Lieutenant Kenichi Obari. RO-108 had a notable combat history, including an attack on October 3, 1943, when it launched 4 torpedoes at 3 U.S. destroyers in Huon Gulf, near New Guinea. The USS Smith narrowly evaded 3 torpedoes, while the USS Henley was hit portside, resulting in catastrophic damage that eventually caused the ship to break in two and sink. Although 15 sailors were killed and 52 were wounded, counterattacks by the Smith and USS Reed failed to hit RO 108. On December 17, 1943, RO 108 was attacked on the surface by US forces, though it managed to survive and continue its patrols. However, it was now on the radar of the USS England, whose relentless hedgehog attacks had already claimed multiple Japanese submarines. In December 1943, while RO 108 was recharging its batteries on the surface, a PBY Catalina from VP-52 attacked the submarine. The attack caused significant damage to RO 108, forcing it to sink by the stern. However, despite reports that it had sunk, RO 108 managed to survive and continue operations. On May 26, 1944, at 11:03 p.m., the USS Raby detected RO 108 on radar at a distance of 15,000 yards, roughly 110 nautical miles northeast of Seidler Harbour, Manus Island. The USS England also acquired radar contact, prompting RO 108 to dive and engage in evasive tactics. England maintained sonar contact at 1,650 yards, and Raby attempted a hedgehog attack, which missed. At 11:23 p.m, England launched a hedgehog attack, scoring multiple hits with 4 to 6 projectiles. The submarine sank, taking all 53 crew members with it. The USS England streak continued when it targeted RO 105. Under Lieutenant Junichi Inoue's command, RO 105 had departed Saipan on May 14, 1944, with Captain Ryonosuke Kato, the commander of Japanese Submarine Division 51, on board. In previous engagements, RO 105 had narrowly escaped torpedoes from the USS Tarpon in August 1943 and missed an attack on the light cruiser USS Columbia. The submarine also rescued several downed Japanese aviators. By May 27, 1944, Japanese intelligence had decoded US Navy communications, indicating that multiple submarines had been sunk in the area north of the Admiralty Islands. A warning was sent out, which RO 112 and RO 109 heeded, withdrawing from the area. However, RO 105 either did not receive the message or chose to stay despite the danger. After sinking RO 108, the USS England, George and Raby docked at Seidler Harbour to restock their depleted hedgehog ammunition. When they resumed operations, they joined a hunter-killer task group centred around the escort carrier USS Hogat Bay. The task group also included the destroyers USS Hazelwood and USS McCord, as well as the destroyer escort USS Spangler. On the night of May 30th to 31st, 1944, the USS Hazelwood detected RO 105 on radar, prompting the submarine to dive and evade. RO 105 used various escape tactics throughout the night, including releasing debris and oil slicks to confuse its pursuers. Hazelwood's sonar-guided depth charge attacks proved ineffective, while George's hedgehog attacks may have hit with 3 projectiles, but failed to disable the submarine completely. At dawn, the USS Spangler and USS England joined the pursuit. Spangler attempted a hedgehog attack, but missed. Commander Haynes, coordinating from George and Raby, ordered the USS England to engage. "Oh hell, go ahead, England." The England's hedgehog attack delivered a massive underwater explosion, confirming the sinking of RO 105 and the loss of all 55 crew members. During May to June 1944, the Allied anti-submarine campaign saw remarkable success, with approximately 17 out of 25 deployed Japanese submarines being sunk. In the Atlantic, the British 2nd Escort Group achieved significant success, sinking 6 German U-boats in 19 days in early 1944. However, the USS England's record of sinking 6 submarines in 12 days remains unparalleled in anti-submarine warfare. In recognition of this extraordinary achievement, Chief of Naval Operations Ernest J. King sent a message proclaiming, "There'll always be an England in the United States Navy." For its actions, the USS England was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation, and Lieutenant Commander Pendleton received the Navy Cross. The sinking of 6 Japanese submarines along the NA line by the USS England had far-reaching strategic consequences. The Japanese initially believed that a large US naval force had passed through the area en route to either the Western Carolines or Western New Guinea. This misjudgment led them to focus their efforts and resources in the wrong direction. The actual US target, however, was the Mariana Islands, and the confusion and delays in the Japanese execution of Operation A-Go resulted in wasted fuel and a strategic disaster for Japan. The US Navy kept details of the USS England's success a secret to protect the source of intelligence used to locate the submarines. Nevertheless, Japanese intelligence correctly inferred that radio intelligence played a significant role in their losses, although they continued to trust in the security of their naval codes. The USS England's service record earned the ship 10 battle stars for its actions in the Pacific, including engagements until May 9, 1945. On that day, while off Okinawa, the ship, now under Lieutenant Commander John A. Williamson, was attacked by 3 kamikaze aircraft. England's anti-aircraft fire hit the first kamikaze, but the plane still crashed into the ship below the bridge. Its bomb exploded shortly afterward, causing significant casualties and forcing the bridge's abandonment. Despite this, the crew managed to control the resulting fires, though the attack left 37 sailors dead or missing and 25 wounded. England was temporarily repaired at Karama-Reto near Okinawa before heading back to the United States. Due to the extent of the damage and the availability of numerous destroyer escorts following the end of the war in Europe, the decision was made not to fully repair the ship, and she was sold for scrap in 1946. Lieutenant Commander Williamson, who had been the executive officer during the submarine sinkings, was often credited for driving the ship's tactical anti-submarine warfare, ASW, effectiveness. Following the war, the USS Rugby participated in the sinking of Japanese submarine the Buoyant M48 in January 1945 near Ulithi, while the USS George rescued 3 crew members from a downed B-29 bomber off Iwo Jima in April 1945. George also delivered the surrender terms to the Japanese garrison on Truk at the war's end. Commander Hamilton Haynes, the escort division commander, was awarded the Legion of Merit for his role in these operations. Unfortunately, he suffered a brain hemorrhage from a water skiing accident in 1946, leading to his retirement as a rear admiral. The Japanese submarine fleet commander, Vice Admiral Takeo Takagi, had also played a prominent role during the war, notably as the senior Japanese commander during the Battle of the Coral Sea. However, he did not survive the US invasion of Saipan, effectively going down with the island. In December 1963, a new ship, the Leahy-class guided missile destroyer leader USS England DLG-22, was commissioned, later being redesignated as a guided missile cruiser, CG-22, in 1975. The second USS England served during the Vietnam War and Operation Desert Storm before being decommissioned in January 1994 and scrapped in 1998-2004. Despite Fleet Admiral King's promise that there'll always be an England in the United States Navy, no new ship has yet borne the name. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. See you soon.